Good evening and welcome to our Cincinnati Public Schools School Board Candidate Forum. I am Jasmine Costin. I was a Class 1 member of School Board School and currently serve as Senior Director of Community Engagement for the Urban League of Greater Southwestern Ohio. School Board School is an organization that brings together aspiring school board members and education advocates, and then provides us with the knowledge and network to drive systemic change. This evening, School Board School is hosting this event in partnership with Cradle to Career, the YMCA, League of Women Voters, All In Cincinnati, the Urban League, Women's City Club of Greater Cincinnati. We want to thank our partners for spreading the word and supporting this forum. The goal of this forum is to learn more about each candidate and their views on some of the most pressing issues facing our district. In connection with this forum, we also have a candidate guide where each candidate has shared their thoughts on some key issues. You can check out our website posted here or linked in the chat. Tonight, we will cover a range of topics, and we are excited to hear and learn more from each candidate. Let me introduce the candidates. Pamela Bowers, Brandon Craig, Gary Favors, Dr. Kareem Moffitt, Mike Morosky, Mary Weinberg. The format of tonight will be that of a forum. We have a set of questions and each candidate will have up to 2 minutes to respond. While I read the question, it will also be shared on the screen with the order of response and then posted in the chat. We only have an hour with you and we want to make sure we get through all of our questions. We ask that you limit your response to 2 minutes, and to be helpful, you will see a timer posted on the screen. With that, let's begin. Question 1. By definition, school board members are supposed to be representatives of the community or the voice of constituents. How will you engage with the community to make sure the decisions you make are representative of those most impacted by a decision? We will begin with Pam Bowers. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Jasmine. Thank you for having me. By definition, you're right. School board members are supposed to be representatives of the community. As a current community partner, collaboration is key to the success of any focused goal in academic and achievement and whatever measurement that you're trying to move the needle in. I am happy that COVID is allowed us to get to a different space because before last year, it was very difficult to engage during the COVID. But now, even though I know we're in a different realm, around the variant and all of that, but being able to get out more. I know that we're on Zoom today, but we have been able to go to some council meetings, to engage personally, for me to attend some school LSDMCs, just to hear from teachers and get back into the realm of being present. So engagement requires being agile, being flexible, listening. As a mental health therapist by vocation, I'm naturally a listener, and I'm naturally not a problem solver, so to speak, but really hearing the perspective of the individual who was presenting an issue or a concern. So being able to get out in the community, being able to be responsive. Even during COVID, we received a whole bunch of emails last school year of the onset of COVID, and being responsive to those emails. As busy as each of our schedules are, it's important that every member of the community who sent an email, every parent who sent a concern via email should have an engaged response. And from that, I was just the response itself. People replied and said, thank you for responding. Being a board member, it requires a lot of time and commitment and dedication to the community and to those that we serve.
Thank you so much for your response. Next, we have Brandon Craig. Yours, please.
All right. Well, thank you again, Jasmine, for hosting today. I think being involved in your community is an important task, and it's something that every person should do, regardless of whether or not we're on the school board or not. And so I think it's even more important when we're on the school board to take the time to reach out to those folks who are in our communities, who are at our schools, who are at the different events in the different churches and the different activities throughout the city continuously. That's why I've told folks when I talk to them, I'm not stopping my conversation today. I'm not stopping my conversation November 2nd. I'm having those conversations go on throughout. I think it's really important to talk to our students, to talk to our parents, to find out what's going on. You can't have that knowledge without that. It's something when I worked at Housing Opportunities, we made sure to do. We reached out to the community. We always were asking folks to join in our focus groups, to join in our different forums that we had, because I think it's really important to be there. I think the other aspect of that is I want to be present. I want to be at school activities. I want to see what folks are doing. I want to be there when the parents are bragging about their kids. I want to be there when the kids are worried about things. I want to be there and be present, because the only way I'm ever going to know what's going on is if folks talk to me. Every time I do an event, I ask folks, what's going on? Like, what, you tell me what your concerns are. Let me have a conversation with you about it. Let's have another conversation. You'll have my contact information. Reach out. Let me know when there's a problem. I think it really is important that we always be available to have conversations and to be continuously willing to listen. It's a very hard thing to do, and it's always been a struggle. Anytime you want to have a conversation with folks, is that everyone was ready to say something. I want to listen first, and I want to listen to what you have to say, because the only way I can be a voice for our future is if I hear what folks are talking about today.
Thank you so much. We now move to Mike Morosky, 2 minutes.
Thank you, Jasmine. Thank you, everyone who put this together, and for everyone for attending on this Thursday. Don't worry, I'm not driving. My wife is driving. We're going on a little wedding anniversary getaway. When I hear this question, I hear it in two separate ways. I hear it as sort of interpersonal, which is on me to be in the community that Pam and Brandon have spoken to. I think I can stand on my record, and I think people know that I really value being in community and accessible. Sometimes I wonder who doesn't have my cell phone number in the city. I think that's important, though. I want to know when people are upset. I want to know when they're happy. It's no secret this past year, a lot of it has been people upset, and rightfully so. I assume we'll talk about some of that later. But keeping those lines of communication open, as we have throughout COVID, Pam referenced this, I think it's notable that we've figured out how to use technology that's been around for 20 years. We finally figured out how to use it to engage. So our policy committee that I chair, we just had an in-person meeting with the public, but also kept streaming it. I intend to continue to push that we make all of our meetings streamed so the public can access them. And I think there you start talking about the systems level of your question. That's part two. So one, a board member needs to be available to the public, even when and especially when times are tough. But also there's that systems level. People have a right to speak at hearing of the public, all people. It's a First Amendment right, and we need to honor that. And lastly, I would just end by saying, my day job, I serve as policy and partnership manager at Cradle, Cincinnati, working on policy change to improve Black maternal health in the county and the state, reduce the infant mortality rate. And in that job, I can't do my job as a white guy without listening to people who don't look like me. And I'm fortunate to have a team of women through Queens Village that influence what I do every day and make my job actually possible. So thanks for the time.
Thank you so much. Gary Favors, 2 minutes. You're on mute.
Can you hear me?
Now we can, yes.
Okay, sorry. Part of what I do as a special ed teacher in the district, I have my ears to the grind, listening to parents, listening to students. So I'm in a different view than everyone else. Being in the classroom, being with the district for almost 20 years, I've seen a different view of concerns, heard concerns from parents, grandparents, advocates. So I'm in a different view that I hear everything. Hear the concerns of my students, hear the concerns of my parents, hear the concerns in the community where I live about different issues that face Cincinnati public schools. So I sit in a seat, unlike many others, actually being in the classroom, and I get a bird's eye view of the concerns and the issues that the community have concerns about, parents, students. So I think I can truly voice being in the community and listening to parents and their concerns and guardians. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Dr. Kareem Moffitt. You have 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you so much, Jasmine. Thank you for this question. The question is, how will you engage the community? And I think that we need to take that from what we've done and then also be creative and innovative in things that we need to do. We have been in a pandemic, and so this is an opportunity for us to do some things differently and expand on some new things that we have, like video and being able to watch a meeting online. We also need to be able to offer, I believe we need to be able to offer the opportunity for our parents to engage and share their opinions longer than just 2 or 3 minutes. So I would love the opportunity to have some creativity around giving the public an opportunity to share with us, not only at PTO meetings, not only at LSTMCs, but at a time when maybe the board can listen outside of board meetings and have the opportunity for parents to and students and community members, our retired people, all of the citizens of the community that are impacted by Cincinnati public education, to be able to tell us how they feel, what's working, what's not working. I was able to conduct some listening sessions at one of the schools in CPS, and I met parents at Indian restaurants. I met them in the grocery store. I met parents where they were. We had brief conversations, and then some parents invited me to their meetings that they were having. So that's the type of engagement that I'd love to continue, listening sessions where we actually listen. We can't just always give assignments. We have to be able to listen and get that feedback. So planning on continuing that momentum to be available, want to go to LSDMC meetings. I've told some of my union family, hey, I'd love to have a standing meeting with you all so that I can hear, so that I can come and I can participate. It's really about establishing a cadence so that we can do some things better that we've been doing before. So this is the time to do that.
Thank you so much. And last but not least, Mary Weinberg, 2 minutes.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, as we're discussing, engagement in the community, as a teacher firsthand, I am also hearing the same stories. I'm hearing what the parents want. And that's my big thing. I want to meet the parents where they are. It's all about communication. It's all about the parents and the students feeling heard and feeling that we're meeting their needs. So I think it's very important as board members to engage the community, to engage City Hall, to engage all of our key stakeholders, to engage everyone and bring everyone together so that we can move forward with this district. As a teacher, I've heard throughout this pandemic, a lot of stories. And what I find that is really helpful is getting some data points and being able to have that background material to say and present, these are the things that we need to change. So we need to continue collecting surveys. We need to continue engaging the parents via virtual opportunities. This past year, it allowed so many parents to attend board meetings. That was one thing that I heard that they really, really appreciated. So for me, being a board member and engaging the community, it's key, and it's about hearing the parents and students, and it's about meeting them where they are.
Thank you so much. All right, we will go to question 2. CPS was one of the first districts in the country to pass an equity policy. Last year, CPS adopted an anti-racism policy. The district recently hired their first diversity, equity, and inclusion manager. And in the back to school mailing, the district highlighted the addition of an African-American history course at our schools. CPS is very clear on where it stands on the role of diversity and inclusion in our education system. However, there are bills at the State House, one of which looks likely to pass, that would eliminate many of the programs and offerings that CPS values. First, tell us what you believe the role of the board is in equity and anti-racism work. Then, tell us how you believe the district should respond if one of these bills at the state level passes. We will start with you, Mary, 2 minutes.
This is a very important topic in terms of equity, and that's something that I'm really standing for as a candidate for school board. I want to make sure that we are meeting our students and giving them and providing them with the things that they need. I definitely know that the board is bringing together so many things, and they're presenting, as you stated, with the equity policy in which CPS is conducting. And it's about making sure the kids don't have barriers, making sure that we are making all things possible. And as you stated, if there are some things that obviously don't pass. We want to make sure that we are being a voice still, that we're still presenting our views to make sure that the changes are occurring. I'm really big within CPS for realizing and recognizing that things need to change. And in order to move forward, we have to change and we have to be that voice and stand forward. So I'm a firm believer on that. I'm a firm believer on sticking to what we believe and speaking up for our students.
Thank you so much. Next, Dr. Kareem Moffitt, 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you for that question. Equity, first of all, I'd like to make sure that we're all on the same page with regard to what equity is. It doesn't mean equal. It doesn't mean we do one thing for every 36,000 of our students. And so we need to make certain that we are providing an equitable education for our schools. And that means our neighborhood schools, give them what they need, our magnet schools, give them what they need, our elementary and our high schools, they all can't get the same thing. And so we need to, as a district, make sure that we are providing equitable education. And that also, to me, means that that's also in-person and remote learning as well. So it just needs to be equitable. So we've got some things that we need to work on within our district. With respect to if something at the state level passes, I think that if we stay true to what we do within our district, then we'll be able to make sure that we're providing an equitable education for our kids on all levels, in all ways, by all means, and marry that with our anti-racism work. I think we'll be fine. We'll be able to write policy that is particular to what we need within our district. Even though we may have some challenges, I think we can still do it.
Thank you so much. Next up, Mike Morosky, 2 minutes.
Thank you so much for the question. First of all, the board's role is to stand strong for our students, and we need to be very clear in our language. There are people in Columbus who do not like our kids. There are people in Cincinnati and Hamilton County that do not like our kids. Our job is to create systems that not only support those kids, but give them the tools they need to upend this system so that the generations after them don't have to deal with this crap. And that's exactly what those bills are. As policy chair these past 2 years, proud to say that I assigned the anti-racism policy last year on June 10th and helped see it through the process. It was passed unanimously, and in it, we created the first Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion and hired Michelle Beltiam to manage the department. One of my top 4 goals for the next 4 years, incidentally, is ensuring that she has what she needs to do her job. A lot of organizations create DEI offices and then expect one person to solve racism. It doesn't work like that. That person has to be supported. That's the Board of Education's job, is to budget through an equity lens. And as Dr. Moffitt said, ensure all of our schools have what they specifically need to meet those kids' needs. As far as the bill itself, kind of 3 things to say about it. I was recently interviewed by Soapbox Cincinnati, actually, on critical race theory. So I felt there was a need to clear the air about what critical race theory actually is, which is telling the truth and teaching the real history of the United States and acknowledging that people can have different versions of history, but they're all real and they need to be learned. 3 things. Thing number 1 is if it passes, we'll ignore it. We're going to continue to teach the truth, just like when Trump was president and rescinded all the Title IX protections for transgender students. We didn't change our policies. We didn't change our procedures. So we're not going to change anything. We're going to teach the truth. We're going to empower kids. 2, it's all legalese. There's words in there you get around controversial topics. What does that mean? And 3, if it comes to it, we'll sue. Because it's our job to stick up for kids.
Thank you, Mike. Next, Gary Favors, 2 minutes.
Can you put the question, I know part of it, can you put the question back up so I make sure I'm covering? Thank you. The first question is what do I believe the role of the board in equity and anti-racism work? First of all, I think as a Black male educator in Cincinnati Public Schools, I think when I look at equity, I look at the fact that predominantly, especially at the elementary roles, and I was at the elementary before, been in high school now for some 10 years, I think the biggest issue that we need to tackle as a school board is the fact that diversity amongst the staff. We need more Black male teachers, which predominantly our schools predominantly are Caucasian women, especially at the elementary level. Then when you go to the high school, you find a sprinkling of Black males. We need to definitely increase the fact that and look at the fact that we don't have the diversity within our ranks that we need in education, looking at our kids and having role models that look like our kids. So I think when I think of equity, we need more equity amongst staff. That's crucial. It's very crucial to get more Black males into our classrooms, period. In regards to the bills that are sponsored at the state level, we continue to look at what's really fair for our kids and what's fair for our communities. And some of those bills, as we know, don't reflect truly what our kids need and our families need. So I'm a big proponent of making sure that everyone in every school should be treated fairly and given the same tools, just like every other school. So I believe in equity amongst staff, period, and we need to do a better job at that. So thank you.
Thank you. Next, Brandon Craig, 2 minutes.
So I think this question poses a really good thought, and for me, because I do equity and inclusion work as my daily job. And what we always talk about is you cannot do this by yourself. The role of the board in doing this is to be a leader, yes, but it's also to build the collaborations within our communities, within our local universities, within our local programs to bring in those folks who can do the extra stuff we need. We so often look at doing this by ourselves, but we don't have to. And I think that's a lot of the things we need to teach our students also. When they have concerns, when they're having problems, they need to feel respected so that when they come to us and talk to us, they can be protected. And I think this is a large part of what those education programs do. They teach a child to feel proud of themselves. They teach a child to understand that their history is part of our history, that everybody is valued. That's why equity and inclusion is so important. That's why when we talk about the bills that are coming up at their state level, we don't have a problem because we're teaching history. We're teaching how people's cultures developed. We're teaching what existed. And we need to fight back with that fact that this is not about some archaic system or some theory. This is about reality. This is about facts, what happened. I think our students will feel that privilege, feel that honor when we stand up for them. I think the other important part, and I really do believe this when we talk about equity and inclusion in our schools, is that yes, we have to work to diversify our staff and our faculty within our schools. But we also need to diversify the conversation with our people in our schools and with the families in our schools to make sure everyone gets a chance to have their voice heard and their information provided to us.
Thank you so much. And last but not least, Pam Bowers, 2 minutes.
Thank you, ma'am. And just in addition to Mr. Morowski's comment, we were and we are the first to have this anti-racism policy. I was on the policy committee and actively in the creation of this. I think it was adopted in December with full approval in January 2021. With regards to the role of the board, the district is obligated to embrace the diversity in our schools with eliminating any barriers that perpetuate disparities among our students. Regarding the critical race theory, I heard Mr. Morowski bring that up. That basically shines a light on systemic racism. And we are not going to, with the diverse population of students that we serve, 65+% of our population is African American. There's no way to get around that. And so for us, because of social injustice is pretty much in our face all the time in the forefront, having the opportunity, as we did last summer, creating the anti-racism curriculum that we've created, having the opportunity for students to have those experiences in a safe place to talk about from their viewpoint. That is what the critical race theory concept is about, the viewpoint of of the oppressed or those who systemic racism is working against. In addition to, our district has expanded a Black history curriculum. And with that curriculum across all of our high schools, I don't see how you can process not having systemic racism discussed in a Black history curriculum. So there's no way to get out of that. The middle passage, you can't discuss that without talking about the middle passage, which has to do with systemic racism, slavery, civil rights, even current injustices. So equity and education policy 2255 that was adopted also in April of 2016, and our anti-racism policy proves that we are committed to making sure our students learn the truth.
Thank you so much. Give me just a second. Alrighty. So our next question. Forgive me, I lost it on my screen and it's back up now. All right now, if you are a caregiver looking for a school and went to a school finder, the only real data point you'd find to tell you whether or not a school is successful is a report card rating based on state testing. If you got to define a successful school, how would you do that? And what would you measure? We will begin with Brandon Craig. 2 minutes, please.
So when we talk about what defines a successful school, and I think this is a really good question because I think the rating system that we utilize so often is just inadequate for most parents. But we need to talk about what programs are offered at the school, what opportunities are available at the school. How does the school measure its own success going forward? One of the challenges I continue to keep hearing, and I hear this with my my niece and nephews right now, is whether or not this elementary school or this middle school prepares you to go to that next high school or junior high school. What languages are you taught? What math are you taught? What English are you taught? So we really need to be talking about what's offered at the school and whether or not those programs are ones that each child would want to take. Give a parent an information so they can empower their decision as to where you move your child next. How do you progress your child? How do you prepare your child for that next opportunity? And I think when the giving them that information, we can then look at whether or not students are succeeding in those programs, whether or not they're going to those next levels, who participates in those programs. I don't think it's a simple, easy measurement of you have 30 kids in the program, so then it's therefore successful. You have a bunch of folks who graduated, so therefore your program worked. No, it really needs that feedback of what people who went through the program felt and experienced, what parents who worked with that program and those teachers in that program dealt with, whether or not the teachers had adequate resources for their programs at the school. And so we need to be able to give a more comprehensive discussion about what schools provide, because far too often, the only information a parent gets is a letter grade in a system that doesn't look at the details, but looks at the bigger picture. And that's not helpful for anybody in this process.
Thank you so much for your response. Dr. Kareem Moffitt, same question, 2 minutes.
Okay. I'm a mom of 3 boys, 3 CPS graduates that graduated from Withrow High School. And for me, yeah, once a tiger, always a tiger for all those tigers out there. But for me, I looked for the programming at the school. And prior to Withrow, my kids went to Pleasant Hill and then went in Montessori. But I looked at the teaching staff. I looked at the credentials of the school in that, what kind of programming is being offered? I asked around. It wasn't just about the report card, because unfortunately the report card doesn't give an accurate measurement, or else it didn't for me when I sent my kids to Withrow. I had a son that was admitted into Walnut and he wanted to go to Withrow, and that's perfectly fine. I think that we need to look at the credentials of the school. What kind of school are you sending your son or daughter to? Withrow was a school of business and is a school of business. They've revamped that. We've got wonderful schools that are providing programming for kids that have different interests different abilities. That should be what you're looking for. But you should also go and interview. That's, the kids are your prized possession. You need to find out if this school fits your son or your daughter. Look at the graduation rate. And then don't always look at the numbers, because something, I'm a researcher. We can make numbers say what we want them to say. Look at who's graduating. Look at how long it's taking, because just because the graduation rate says that it's a certain percentage, that is a state level. So did they graduate within 4 years, but they could have graduated in the summer? Look at all those things when we're talking about what is a successful school. It's the staff. It's the culture of the school. It's about, is it going to be able to provide my son or my daughter with what they need? I want to work on vocational training because our kids need that. They need to be able to graduate with some credentials so that they can get out and be gainfully employed. So those are some of the things I'm going to work on. That's what makes a successful school too.
Thank you so much. Mary Weinberg, you are next.
Thanks. That's actually a really good question. And I'm going to give two perspectives. One, I'm going to give a perspective as a parent of two CPS beautiful girls. And I'm going to give a perspective as an employee, as an educator. When I think of successful, and especially with my children, what I thought about is, where can I send my children that they're going to thrive? And of course, out of the 66 schools that we have within the district, we want our children to thrive at every single school. But what I found is I felt comfortable with the staff. I felt comfortable with the principal. I felt comfortable with the teachers. I felt comfortable with everything that they had to offer. And I think as a parent, what parents should look for, they should look for programs that are going to provide, or a school that's going to provide for their child. As Kareem mentioned about the vocationals, as we're looking into high school students, it's really big that we're offering programs for these high school students so that when they graduate, they can decide what they want to do with their future. As a teacher, I'm going to say my perspective of what I'm looking for in a school, especially as a school that I'm working at. I'm looking for that collaboration among the teaching staff. I'm looking for teachers who want to be the best educators possible. I'm looking for teachers who want to make students feel as if they're heard. So for me, those are a couple of things that make a school successful, not just the report card, and of course, looking at other data points as well. But I think that's key, is the thriving aspect.
Thank you so much. Pam Bowers, 2 minutes.
Thank you, ma'am. For me as a parent, the key is, how do I feel when I walk into a school building? As a clinician, a lot of things are about internal feelings. How do I feel around the dynamics? As a teacher at Chatfield College, when I was teaching homeschool community relations class, what I realized, and what I've always known in working with clients, is that the parent relationship with the school is key. That what you get from that parent interaction at that school is, the parents are the first teachers. The parents are kind of a bit one of the most important teachers of their child. And so being able to feel good in that school, when you walk in, it tells you how you feel. You can look for grades. You can look for curriculum. For me, when I was deciding on my children, it was diversity. And I bought my house in Westwood, where I lived for 21 years, so that my children can go to Dade or Montessori, because when I went in that building, it felt good to me. And I wanted my children to be exposed to the diversity, to follow to the whole curriculum with that. So attend the school is what I would say. Show up at the school. When people were asking me about Aiken in the community, is that a good school? I said, all of our schools are good. That bothers me when I hear people say that. Then I said, go to the school, attend the school, see how you feel, understand the curriculum that goes on in the school. And the key point is partnering. When your child goes to school, you're not handing them off just so the teacher can teach them. You become a partner invested in that child. And I tell that in that child's education. And I say that to parents. We're not just giving them and saying, okay, this is a great school, so that's what they're going to do. You are committed to being a partner. How does it feel to you? Set up a time to go and visit. Those dynamics will tell you if this is a good fit for your child.
Thank you so much, Ms. Bowers. Mike Morosky, same question, 2 minutes.
Thank you for the question. You know, for my wife, Katie, and I, selecting a school for our son, James, is easy because we're in the Hayes Porter neighborhood boundary, and we think it's important to go to your neighborhood school, to be part of your neighborhood school for a whole host of reasons. I walked inside this school many times. To Pam's point, I think that's important. And I say the same thing, Ms. Powers. You're like, well, my kid didn't get into X, Y, or Z magnet, so now we have to go somewhere. Well, if you ever walked inside with them. That's another conversation maybe for another time. But what I would like to talk about with the measures, that state report card measures wealth. It doesn't measure learning and it doesn't measure achievement. It measures wealth. And you know, we do have our own measures, which we're proud of. Even maybe prouder on a system hours of Superintendent Laura Mitchell metrics. We're happy to say we're looking at real things. For me, there's really two things. I was a teacher and an assistant principal. As assistant principal, it's important to me that my teachers were happy and enjoy coming to work, because if they're not, that ends up falling onto the kids in the classroom where the rubber meets the road. And so making sure you have a culture that is supportive of the educators and professionals in the building, so they're happy to go to work. They're happy to be there. They're happy to see the kids. They trust their administrators. They trust their bosses and one another. That's important. That's number one. You can measure happiness quotients. You can measure job satisfaction. Second, we're looking at the students. Agency I used to run called Upspring, working with kids experiencing homelessness. We measured hope. We measured feelings, good feelings about tomorrow. And we can measure these things. We have that data. And I think it's important to measure that, because if our kids go to school and find it comfortable to make friends and they feel safe there, they're going to learn. If their teachers are happy to go to work, they're going to facilitate that process and walk with the students even more effectively. So it's two prongs, in my opinion. And the good news is we can already measure.
Thank you so much. And last but not least, Gary Favors, same question, 2 minutes.
Thank you. There are many observations that I can make about our schools and what makes a good, successful school, but I think it always boils down to the people that comprise that school building. One of the things that I look at Gamble Montessori, where I'm at currently, is how our teachers go beyond the call of duty to make all families feel welcomed and supported, and making sure that their kids are getting the best education. It boils down to people. Where the rubber meets the road is people, making sure that teachers understand that making sure these kids are taken care of. We have Central Clinic in our building that is very supportive of our kids who have different things that come up and they need someone to talk to, making sure we have the folks and the staff there to support our kids in crisis, in good times, and anything that they need. So the most important thing a successful school will give to anybody coming in is making sure they're taken care of and their needs are met. So I believe that is so important, and I see that every day where I'm at Gamble Montessori High School. So successful school means that staff, no matter from custodial staff, from cafeteria staff, making sure our kids and parents are taken care of. And that then spills over in the community. And then everyone knows that I can send my child because this school will take care of my child. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's head to our next question. I think we would all agree that building a school district where every child can reach their potential is critical to individual student success and the success of our city. Two-part question. What do you see as one of the biggest obstacles facing the district? And since we know that there are so many people in CPS already working toward this goal, what do you see as one thing the district does very well? We will begin with you, Mr. Favors. You have 2 minutes.
I think one of the things that the district has done very well when Laura Mitchell was superintendent was really set a clear vision of the 3 E's: enroll, enlist, and employ. That's huge, making sure that our kids get off to a great start, making sure they're prepared for once they graduate, that they are enrolling, enlisting, or employed. One of the biggest challenges that I've always said that we need to do a better job is our vocational programs. When we look at the Oaks, when we look at Butler Tech, all those programs are phenomenal. We need a dedicated building. We need, just like Butler Tech and the Oaks, we need where kids can learn skills that they can take into the workforce, just like plumbing, electricians. We have a construction program at Woodward, which is an excellent program. We have many programs, but they need to be as robust, just like Butler Tech and some of those other schools. So we need to really improve on our vocational programs. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Same question, Mike Morosky, 2 minutes.
Excellent. Thanks for the question. What's plaguing our district and plagues every urban area in America is poverty and racism. I'm fond of saying public schools did not create poverty and racism, but we've inherited them. And it's our job to acknowledge where we fall short in combating them, and maybe even have the audacity to look at ourselves in the mirror and say, are we perpetuating some of this stuff? And I think that's where the anti-racism policy that Ms. Bowers alluded to, she was part and parcel of creating on that policy committee, with board member Vice President Ryan Messer as well that year. But it's up to us to admit these things, that we did inherit these systems and we have to upend them for kids. And, we need the students' help to do it. And that kind of leads into what I think, we have done well. And one thing I think we've done really well is the whole child approach to students. Watching the district in the past decade from the outside, from like a partner perspective to now being within, seeing where we've come as far as embracing the whole student, with our Mind Peace partnerships, mental health specialists in every building, from our restorative practice to this past spring and fall, really revamping the Jacob Center so that it's really about restorative practice and not just, saying it is, that we don't expel or suspend, but actually like having a curriculum there, that's a big deal. And having success centers in our high schools, working with students, going into the elementary schools and seeing these sensory rooms where kids really can go and really work out their feelings and what's going on, because we need to embrace the bullied and the bullies. And oftentimes, I think districts fall short with the bullies and leave them to their own devices. And I think we've really wrapped our students really, really well. And I'm extremely proud of that. And in so doing, part of that is the partnerships we've created, because back to the poverty and racism, if we're going to upend that stuff, we're going to need everyone in the city to get on board with us. And I think that's a place that we have done and will continue to do well.
Thank you for your response. Next, we have Dr. Kareem Moffitt. Same question, 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you for that question. I kind of want to start on what we're doing well, because I want to start on a positive. I think we are, as a district, we are great visionaries. We come up with some great initiatives. The initiatives that we've got, employ, enlist, and educate, though, that is a wonderful initiative. It's awesome. We've got some great staff at every one of our schools. We've got great partners. We've got some teachers that are really rocking it. And I don't think, along the lines of what some of the things that we need to improve upon, I don't think enough of our schools get the attention that they need in the community. I think we do a lot of focusing on some of our magnet schools that are doing great things, but we've got some neighborhood schools that are rocking it. Euler was rocking it, top 5 in graduation, but that didn't get as much press as the other as other schools. And so I think that we can do we can improve upon accenting and exploiting the things that we're doing well within our district. That's one thing that I think we need to do better. We need to work on engagement, because our community does not always feel heard, and that's the community inside of the district. That's not always the community on the outside. So we need to really improve upon the engagement, and I think we need to work on getting our partners more engaged. We've got people who want to engage with our district, who have treasures that we can really be, our kids can be using, and it's just not, they're having a tough time either gaining interest into or getting around inside of our district. And I think we need to do some things differently, but we are hell of a visionaries. We can come up with a vision, and we've got some staff that are rocking it, and I think we need to exploit all of our schools, everything that we're doing. We need to exploit it better.
Thank you so much. Brandon Craig, same question, 2 minutes.
So I think the biggest struggle that is facing our school district, quite honestly, is just money. And as Mike was talking about, it's the poverty within our households, where we have more than 80% of the students coming from economically disadvantaged households, whether it's the inadequate funding that we do for our schools and our programming, and whether we, the incentives to developers and businesses to not pay taxes in to support our schools, whether it's the lack of investment from some of our community members and some of our business leaders to truly put a stake in our schools, to tell our students that they are important, that we value you and we want you to be successful. And so that takes a lot of effort to build that back up. But what I've seen these last few years, and what I'm hearing from all of my friends who are teachers and all of my friends who have kids in the district and my family who has kids in this district and everyone, is that there are a lot of passionate people in our district that are ready to do successful things with the limited resources we have. We talk about how we are doing so many things, as Dr. Moffitt talked about, as being visionary with our ideas and our programmings, and as both Mike and Pam have talked about the great work they did with the anti-racism and bringing a lot of these great initiatives that are first in the nation, first of their kind, that don't come easy, that didn't come without some sacrifice and hard work. We have people who are passionate about their work. I look at Mr. Favors and Ms. Weinberg and know that they were passionate about their teaching and passionate about their students. I think that's the greatest thing that we have in our district, is that human capital that is so passionate about making sure our students are successful, that want to do more for our students every single day, that if we give them the resources and the tools, and if we can get that investment into them so they can invest more into our students, we will just see the results skyrocket out. We'll see all of our students getting the better quality education.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Pam Bowers, 2 minutes, same question.
Thank you, Jasmine. One of the strongest things that I think we've done in the district, before I was even a board member, and Dr. Moffitt was a part of this group, it was a strategic and planning and engagement committee that we want, and which was the pinpoint of the strategic plan, the 3-year strategic plan. And that was so inclusive of community members that I heard Dr. Moffitt talk about. Community members, business partners, parents, administrators, teachers, the board, Mr. Board, Mike, I don't know if Mike was on that committee. I think it was Ryan and somebody else, but you knew about it. You were part of that. Suggested that we have this STEP committee. And that was so entangled with feedback from all stakeholders to create. It was a buy-in. It was created by everybody because this is what they wanted to see, these 5 measurable outcomes and student-centered achievement, growth, community engagement. And of course, we started it, and then the pandemic hit. And so I think for us, realigning and readjusting and re-engaging, changing that based on our experience from the pandemic is strong too, because we've learned some things from the pandemic to realign the strategic plan. One of the things that I think we can focus more on that we're not doing well with is our academic achievement gap among our Black and Brown students. So rolling back some of that rigor to our elementary schools, our neighborhood schools, not just our magnet schools that I heard Dr. Moffitt speak of, but we have to roll the rigor back so that more African-American, we don't just need to check the box on a strategic plan saying that they took the AP course or the College Credit Plus course. We need them to pass the course. And we're not proficient in passing our advanced placement courses, and not enough African-American males are taking College Credit Plus courses. So those are things that we need to do better at.
Thank you so much. Last but not least, Mary Weinberg, 2 minutes. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm going to start with the things that I feel that the district has obviously had some struggles with, and then I'm going to end off on a good note of the things that they've done very well. So currently, throughout this pandemic, the biggest obstacle that I feel that the district has had to deal with is the losing the trust of the parents in the district, and really trying to figure out how to regain that back. That is one thing that I've heard as a teacher. It's a big push to regain trust, and parents want that trust. Next thing would be space. Space is a huge concern in Cincinnati Public Schools. Yes, we are growing and that is a good thing, but space is a huge issue. And then of course, our busing situation. I think that is one of the biggest obstacles right now that we are facing, and we're having to figure out what are we going to do to make sure that our children are safe. I'm going to say that throughout this pandemic, the district did do some things well. They really, really harped on taking care of our students with the expanding of the food services. I thought that that was something very key and very good that they did do. We increased our internet. We gave internet to all the students. We gave every student a computer and device. We also started new programming. And I really think for the district, the big thing that they have working for them is their theme, that the future is bright. Really just sharing that theme among students and families to let them know that the potential is there. So that is what I would close out with, as the district is doing well, is letting all of our students know that their potential is there.
Thank you so much for your responses. All right, we have time for one last question. I just want to remind you that since this is our last question, we will be moving to 1 minute and 15 seconds for the responses, okay? All right, thank you for your answers in our candidate guide about how you think the district should spend the $280 million in federal ARP ESSER funding. As many constituents may have seen in a recent board meeting, the treasurer explained how the money is being allocated. Two-part follow-up question. How do you think the district should assess the effectiveness of the money as it's spent? And how do you think the public should be kept aware of the impact of those dollars? We are going to start with Mike Morosky, 1 minute, 15 seconds. You're up.
Thanks for the question. You know, this has been on our mind for the better part of a year now, and we were extremely bullish as a board to ensure that the dollars were spent on things that could either be replicated, could end, or could somehow be self-sustained in the future, because something like summer scholars is a really big deal, that every kid has the option to go to this summer experience with academics and social emotional learning. But if we do that one summer, who cares? 2 summers, who cares? I referenced earlier working with kids experiencing homelessness. That summer loss is very real. And so we were real deliberate about how we spent it. So how to measure, it's 2 parts to me. One is, were we successful at keeping our kids healthy and safe? You know, at our next board meeting, I've asked that we revisit our COVID protocols. I'm greatly concerned about what's going on now, but we are doing a good job keeping them safe, I believe. But that's one way. And the other way, of course, is, did we accelerate learning? You know, mitigating learning loss is not good enough. Did we accelerate learning? You know, hiring dozens of first grade reading specialists, we'll be able to actually see, did we accelerate that learning and that reading score? So 2 parts, health and safety, acceleration of learning.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Dr. Kareem Moffitt. 1 minute, 15 seconds.
Okay, I'll try my best to be succinct. The question is, how should we assess the effectiveness? I think we should assess it regularly, in the beginning of a program, all throughout, and then at the end. I mean, we need to make certain that we are held accountable for this money and that it is actually effective in whatever we do. So, and it doesn't mean, oh, we did this and then let's do it at the end. No, we need to assess it and assess it from all constituents, people that are participating, the people that designed it. We need to assess that so that we can make those changes in real time, and then also make some movements at the end. And then how will we ensure that they're sustainable? Let's see, how will we keep the public aware? Well, I personally think that we need to do some school funding workshops. I have seen Treasurer Wagner's presentation in excess of 8 or 9 times, and I still am confused. School funding is an area that the public needs more information on. And I think if we're able to, and Treasurer Wagner is very bright, if we're able to get workshops out on school funding and this money in particular, how are we using it? Let's be accountable for it. And where did it go? The community will support us. So I really think that's it.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Gary Favors, 1 minute and 15 seconds. You're up. You're on mute.
I'm sorry. We need to always constantly think of the our voters and who, the stakeholders, rather, I'm sorry, in the community that we are held accountable to, and how we spend the money, where we spend the money, and making sure we get the best bang for our dollars. So there needs to be constantly reports sent out to community members, stakeholders all over the city, and saying, this is what we want to spend the money on. This is how we can leverage the best bang for our bucks. I've always thought of programs that will sustain our schools. It may be looking outside of night school, looking at other things that we can do in order to gain the momentum that we need for academic success. The public needs to be constantly aware of how we're spending the money. That's just the bottom line, and that's done by news releases. That's done in a number of ways. So I think those things, and making sure that the folks that we are accountable to know how we're spending the money at all times. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mary Weinberg, you are up. 1 minute, 15 seconds. Thank you.
So the question was, I think you asked, how should the federal dollars be spent? And I'm going to just go quickly with some of the things that I think that they should go to for our students is staffing, of course, making sure that we have enough teachers, nursing staff, making sure that we have the nurses in every single building, making sure that we have resource coordinators in every single building, and making sure that we have the necessary textbooks for our children. How we can update the community with how we're spending these dollars is just being very transparent. Transparent at the board meetings, transparent with our public records, and really allowing, I guess, even the board member and community members and stakeholders to really dive into the budget. And as Kareem mentioned, about really understanding the budget and making sure that we are aware exactly where these dollars are going and what they're being spent for. So transparency.
Thank you so much. Brandon Craig, 1 minute, 15 seconds.
So I think we have a great opportunity with these dollars to make sure that we are providing greater access to more education for our students. And so whether that is the investments in new technology, whether that's the things like our counselors in our schools or investments into materials, have a good quality education be provided to our students. And so I think that's the measurable goal. How are we increasing educational access for our students with these dollars? And I think Mike made a great point that these have to be things that we're investing in that are sustainable, that will last over years, that will be things that we can bring out in the future and build investment for that future with other programs. The easiest way for us, though, to make sure that we're holding ourselves accountable is to put the information out in plain and simple terms. Make sure that we're communicating what our money is being spent on in a clear language that is not garbled up in other ideas or other messaging or other markers. Be really succinct and explain what the dollars are, why we're spending them, and how they're creating a benefit. And I think if we do that, we'll be transparent and people will understand how their money is being spent.
Thank you. Pam Bowers, you will close us out.
Closing it out. I'm bringing up the caboose. All right. Fiscal responsibility for managing these funds is strictly the responsibility of this board, making sure that we're equitably distributing these funds. I heard Mr. Moralski mention sustainability. Mr. Craig mentioned sustainability. That is going to be the intentional part that we have to be very careful with. I heard Ms. Weinberg said being transparent and being truthful and realistic about these funds. Keep in mind that accelerated learning comes only when we have our socio-emotional intact. And I haven't spoke on that much tonight, but the socio-emotional learning, Maslow's hierarchy of needs has flipped Bloom's taxonomy upside down. That means that this is working together. You have to do both at the same time. So mental health and making sure the students are okay after this pandemic is key before we can even move to the academia. So making sure that that is aligned with what we're doing. And so that sustainability has to come. Also sustaining that, because our students can't move unless the basic things are done. And this pandemic has shown that's been a strong effect thus far this school year. From my perspective, I can see already.
Well, thank you so much for all of your responses. Thank you to our candidates for joining us tonight. We know campaigning takes a lot of energy and commitment, and we appreciate the work you are putting in service to our community's children. Thank you to everyone in the audience who joined us. We hope you feel more informed and prepared to vote in the upcoming election. Head to School Board School's website to learn more about the candidates and the election. Don't forget to download the candidates guide, which has our candidates' answers to 6 additional questions. Have a great night, everyone.